Hey everyone, welcome to Flavor Talk with the Barbecue Pro Shop Factory team. I'm co-host Brian Neale, aka Mr. Freak of Smoke Freaks.
And I'm Neale, Ms. Freak. Together, Brian and I are the tongues and testers behind the flavor guide at Barbecue Pro Shop, the world's first comprehensive flavor decoder and buying guide for barbecue and grilling rubs and seasonings. Hopefully everybody knew that.
So joining us tonight is our partner in flavor going all the way back to 2019, Jeff Pelmani, owner of Barbecue Pro Shop. Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Good, everybody. Good to see you tonight.
And tonight we are honored with a very special guest who happens to be one of our barbecue heroes, Rod Gray, CEO of KCBS, the Kansas City Barbeque Society. He's an incredible barbecue champion and purveyor of a popular line of rubs and seasonings called Eat Barbecue. Hey Rod, what's up?
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We are super happy to have you tonight. So a little bit for those who are tuning in about Flavor Talk. This is our monthly edition where we get together with some of the names and faces behind some of the big rubs and seasoning and barbecue, but also just members of barbecue family or who are up to interesting things, making stuff happen. And Rod has been around the barbecue scene since way before I was. In fact, I can remember sitting at home back when I was a working schmuck in the corporate world, watching you on Pitmasters. And that was one of the things that made me think, wow, this barbecue competition thing seems pretty cool. So tonight we're going to unpack a little bit of your barbecue story and find out where you come from, where you're all about, and where you're going with your newest barbecue thing, being CEO of the Kansas City Barbeque Society. So why don't we start out with some of the basic CV? Where are you from, where you live, and how did you get into cooking barbecue?
Hey Brian, if we have time, I need you to teach me how not to be a working schmuck, though. After this, okay? Right after, please. I grew up in Central Kansas. We didn't really have barbecue, and so I really wasn't introduced to barbecue till I went off to college, and I went to a smaller school. It's called Emporia State University. It used to be a teachers' college, but they had expanded with some business programs, and I had gone there for a summer camp when I was in high school, so it was a natural fit to go back there. And then when I came to Kansas City, that's really when I was exposed to barbecue, which was actually 1987. So I've been in Kansas City since then. And so Kansas City, I call Kansas City my home.
Gotcha. So when in central Kansas, though, were you in a small town or on a farm or middle of nowhere or what?
Oh, you know, a little guy you might know named Dwight D. Eisenhower and I grew up together, and not together, grew up in the same town. I'm from Abilene, Kansas.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. I've heard of that place. In fact, there's some country songs that name drop Abilene pretty hard. So that's a fun fact, everyone, about Rod Gray. Grew up in the same town as Dwight D. Eisenhower. So
before they write in, Brian, before they write into you, I think those songs are about Abilene, Texas, but I'll take it.
I always assumed it was Abilene, Kansas, because that's the one I've been to. I grew up in Kansas City, so probably went to some of the same barbecue restaurants, at least, that you did. So Kansas City, obviously a big barbecue town. In fact, ask anyone who's from there, they'll tell you it's the barbecue capital of the world. Certain other cities and states will certainly disagree, but Kansas City lays a good claim to it. There's been a big barbecue scene there going on forever. So I'm just curious how you got into it specifically, whether that was from eating it or going to Chiefs games or what? How did that get in your blood?
So, you know, once you're exposed to barbecue, I mean, I've never met anyone who couldn't find something they didn't love about barbecue. So once you're in it, you know, you start to become obsessed with it. And I used to go out to the Great Lenexa Barbecue Contest because I had a coworker that competed in it. And every Monday morning he'd come in shaking his head. He couldn't figure out why he didn't get a call. And I didn't really understand it all. And fast forward some years, and I owned my own company, and my office manager and her father would pick a contest to compete in every year, one. And it was always Blue Springs, which is one of the oldest barbecue contests in Kansas City and probably in the country. But that year, 2001, we built a brand new speedway, and the speedway was having a contest on the infield. And she invited me out. And it was July. It was so hot. I remember it was so hot. And a friend and I walked out that tunnel onto the infield and saw this new black asphalt, just thought these people would be melting. Not only were they not melting, they were having a blast. Parties everywhere, baby pools full of ice with lawn chairs in them, misting fans going. I met the night before, I'd seen a Food Network show with Paul Kirk and David Close, pit builder out of Houston. And I'm walking down this aisle, and there those two guys are standing together. I just saw them on TV the night before. I went home and said to myself, I've got to get involved in this. It was just too much fun. And my wife was out of town that weekend, so I went down, got on the computer, and I stayed up all night reading about it. I found this old forum called the Barbecue Forum, BBQ Forum. Didn't know who was there. Later found out pretty much most of the best pitmasters in the country were on that forum. And at the end of reading that, I discovered that I needed to go buy a Hasty Bake because it had won the American Royal a few years earlier. And before that week was out, I owned a Hasty Bake. That's how I got started.
Wow.
Okay, so had you been cooking any barbecue at all in your life or at home before that? Or did you just jump right in and go, okay, I'm going to be a competition barbecue guy?
I mean, we toyed with it in the oven, to be honest with you. I remember some old recipe where you cooked these ribs in the oven and then you took them out and you put them in a paper bag, and the paper bag was supposed to do something. I don't remember that it did anything, and we thought it was great. But then I got that first cooker, and Sherry would tell you, I proceeded to absolutely just destroy briskets. They were just not even edible on that thing. I went to Tulsa, picked up that Hasty Bacon. On the way in, I stopped at it was called McGonigal's, an old meat market, and bought 2 briskets and came home.
Oh gosh, we used to get our Thanksgiving turkeys there.
Yeah. And came home and just, I ruined briskets for weeks and weeks, to the point that it drove me to look for a new cooker. And I found a guy here in town. I read about him. He was a fireman, and he had a one-hole old fire station where he built pellet cookers. I didn't even know what a pellet cooker was. And called him up and went down and saw him. It's Fast Eddie building the FE 100s. And that's what really launched. I think that's what launched my competition career, because I was able to cook all day Saturday, all day Sunday, even during the week while I was at work, unattended. And then that's how I practiced so much, was by having that automation available to me. And yeah, I remember getting on the circuit with those, and people wanted to think that was cheating. And you know, we all know it wasn't now, but back then it was new technology, and people were unsure of it. The cool thing was Eddie was on the KCBS board back then. He kind of saw that future, and he kind of shaped that future. He got the board to agree to that language in the KCBS rules about spits and augers and draft fans, and wood pellets as a fuel. He's the one who got all that language into the KCBS rules way back when.
Wow. You know, Ms. Freak and I, we were very similar when we got into KCBS. We just got the bug just because, you know, I'd always been interested in barbecue, given growing up in Kansas City and eating, you know, restaurant food, which, you know, I thought was pretty darn good. But, you know, I had no idea that competition was a whole different thing. You know, sure, it starts with the same basic proteins that you're going to get in a restaurant, but almost everything from that point forward is different than, you know, production food for the masses. Yeah. And so we had no experience cooking barbecue per se, other than, you know, a couple weeks on an alley picked Brinkman, I think it was, before we entered our first thing. And yeah, it was just, we were already excited about it because we had seen, you know, guys like you on TV. And I think the whole TV thing that was going on at that period of time, like the early 2010s, it seemed like you couldn't turn on cable TV without running into a cooking show. And for some reason, that stuff was just on repeat on certain channels rather. So it just, you know, inspired me and a whole lot of other people. It seemed to kind of jump in at the same time. But I'm really curious about barbecue competition life before that point, before TV made it famous, and KCBS was, you know, a smaller operation, hadn't really had the glow of the limelight.
Well, and Carolyn Wells tells us better than I do. I've been around it since about 2000, and you know, they started KCBS in 1986, and she talks about how television is kind of cyclical, that it comes along and gets enamored with barbecue and shoots several shows, and it goes away for a period of time, and then it comes back. And she will admit that when the shows are on, it boosts interest in everything barbecue, all things barbecue, including KCBS, and we see membership rise during those times. But competition barbecue, I didn't really know I didn't really know how big it was. I mean, we're still a small family. I think we're still ultimately a small family, but I didn't know how big it was, because in Kansas City, we could cook a barbecue contest within probably, I don't know, 50 miles every weekend through the summer.
Yep.
They weren't the most well promoted or advertised or run events, but there was always somewhere to cook barbecue. In fact, to the point that Kansas City is kind of callous to the idea of competition barbecue, except when the big events happen. So yeah, we started out in our first year, and actually there were 3 of us the first year, and it was actually a team, Extreme Pork. I almost forgot my own first team name. 2 other guys and I, and we cooked 20 or 22 contests. We traveled a little bit. We went up to Brainerd, Minnesota, and cooked the first ever ABA, American Barbecue Association event, and won it. And because it was enough teams, I remember Dr. Barbecue was there, Ray was there, and a lot of people I can remember that are gone. But we were lucky enough to win that, and I figured out that there were only 2 contests in Minnesota, so we had a 50-50 shot at going to the Jack. So I didn't want to wait to find out if we got drawn, so I called the other team and said, "Hey, I just want to know if your bung gets drawn, will you go to the Jack?" And the guy on the other end said, we planned our entire family vacation around going to the American Royal, and I won't have any vacation if I get drawn to the Jack, so I'm not gonna submit. So we knew we were not automatic to the Jack Daniels our very first year. So we did a lot. We went to that first Royal, won the rib category that first year. And nobody had ever heard of us, and then we went to the Jack, and we got a couple of calls, top 10 calls. I don't remember what they were, but the best part was my wife was looking over that literature that comes from the Jack Daniels, and she's like, "Hey, there's a dessert category. I might enter that." So I'm like, "Hey, great, come with us, enter the dessert category." This is kind of a long story, and I'll be quick, but she cooked this dessert, presented it to me, and I said, "Oh, please don't submit that to the Jack. Please don't submit that." The next day, she took the leftovers to work. It was a big pan, and she served it, and everybody raved about it. So she, in fact, did turn that in, and she, in fact, won the Jack Daniels dessert category in 2002, in 02. So that was pretty cool for Sherry. That hooked Sherry. From then on, Sherry was a part of the team. She soon had the name the closer, and has been my teammate ever since.
So back in, let's say 2000, the early 2000s, what was the typical competition rig like? Was it anything like today, where you see guys pulling up with giant 5th wheel trailers? Or, I mean, I've heard stories of doubles that were 50 miles apart, where they'd cook on Saturday and then pick up and go to another place. It seems like y'all must have been traveling lighter than they do now.
It's so crazy the way you say that, like it's something so foreign, but that's what we did. When I got started, especially in Kansas City, there were a few trailers, but most people cooked under easy ups, usually a pair of them. And their rigs weren't even there. I mean, not their rigs, their vehicles weren't even in their spot. And our first year, we cooked out of a 16 by 8, I think, cargo trailer. Everything was in totes. We had way too much stuff. We took it all out of the trailer. We rolled the pits out of the trailer, and then we had to put it all away. And so by mid 2002, I bought that trailer, that little bitty 20-foot trailer with the deck on the back of it, that I cooked with my entire career. We mounted two fast eddies back there, and then we finished the interior of that trailer, and then that was the rig. My rig never grew any bigger. I went from having, being an early team to even have a trailer on the circuit to probably having one of the smallest competition trailers on the circuit.
How many miles you reckon are on that trailer?
You know what? I used to know that, because the 2 trucks I pulled it with, I'll bet you there are something like 300,000 miles on that trailer.
Wow, man. That's something.
And the rest of them were on that green pit.
That must be a well-built trailer, I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm notorious. I service my trailer regular. Darren Worth tells a story. He never services his trailers. I service my trailers religiously, and I burn up axles, and he doesn't. So there have been many sets of axles underneath that trailer over the years.
Yeah, well, that's because he's got 3 of them, so he's got a spare.
Hey, Brian, did you hear Rod's reference to his barbecue totes?
Oh yeah.
Boy, that is something, Rod, I can relate to. We kind of giggle every year. Coolers and totes. It's when my barbecue triceps show up, for a small amount of time. And our kitchen right now is pretty destroyed with all sorts of totes for this weekend.
Yep. That's the way we do it. And over time, you finally realize you're not getting in this one so much, you're not getting in that one so much. So you pull out what you needed out of those and you push those aside and hopefully don't bring them every time.
Right.
We used to unload an army of totes.
Yeah. Well, I remember Mike Wozniak from QOW gave Smoke Freak some advice once, and it was to get your crap out of the street. I'm embellishing a little bit. And we took that to heart, thinking, we do have a lot of stuff, and it is in the street. Literally, some of the totes that are like, well, what if that was like underneath the trailer, literally in the street? So we made a promise from that point forward to come home from every competition and remove at least one item from the totes based on, what we were using or not using. And we did that. And there's still a mountain. Is that what you said? A mountain of totes, an army of totes, just endless totes.
I am here to tell you guys that it doesn't have to be this way. So over a couple weekends ago, we were out vending at a backyard event. It was out in Glen Ellen, big barbecue fest they do there every year. And they had 45 backyard teams in there, and I think they were cooking 4 to 5 categories, and everybody had 10 by 15 space, and they all made it work, and they turned out a lot of incredible food. So sometimes I think, we just make it hard on ourselves. But enough about that stuff. So let's just, real quick, what was it like being on TV? I mean, I don't know many people I can ask that question to, but you've been on a lot of TV.
That question.
Realize that was 10 years ago first. So by now, all of the bad memories have faded, and all I have left are the great stories and the great memories. But, the really funny thing was how I got there. So you mentioned 2009. That was the first year that they started Pitmasters, and that was the year they picked 7 people and followed them around to a group of contests. And I got the phone call. It was John Marcus, and John said, "Rod, I have good news and bad news." And I said, "Yeah, John, what's that?" And he said, "Well, we picked you number 8." And I said, "Okay, all right." And he said, "But we're only going to take 7." And I said, "Oh man, okay." He said, "But if you'll follow us around, we'll fit you in sometimes." And I was in the hunt for Team of the Year that year, and it was already, I think, August when we were having this conversation. And I thought, I can't give up on a Team of the Year chase for the TV thing. So I said no, which started a situation that was kind of a love-hate between Barbecue Pitmasters and Pellet Envy. And so the next year I'd went on and they'd say no, and the next year they'd ask me and I'd say no, and until finally we got down to a situation where there was a show going to be filmed in Kansas City, calling it the best pitmaster in Kansas City. And I kind of think they knew that it was going to be hard to not include me, and I kind of thought that they knew it'd be hard not to include me. So we shot that show. That's how it really started for us, is that standalone show in 12. And then only because we won it, they decided to make an episode in the 13 series where they included the 3 winners of these shows that were kind of spin-offs of the Johnny Trigg year, which was the year that was in spring of 12. So honestly, I'm always the guy that never thinks my food is good enough. So I never think I'm going to win an episode of Pitmasters. And I'm always trying to put the best food in the box, but I'm always leery of my own food. I could do better is the attitude. So it was stressful during the shooting of it completely. And some weird, I've got so many great stories. We don't have time for them. One of them was Tim Grant and I were sitting back there sequestered after that first show at the Royal. And Tim leans over and says, "Hey, tell me how to get a sauce and rub on the market." And I'm thinking, what a weird time for this question. And I start talking to him about it. And then I'm thinking, why would Tim ask me that? And I'm like, well, duh, he thinks he has the show won. And then I win that episode, and I don't have sauces and rubs on the market, but I already had the research done. So I had a good friend in marketing who said, if you're ever going to put products out, they need to get out before that show airs. And so we did that. But it was a good time, Brian. It was. I do want to tell you, One story that most people don't know, in the finale, they gave us Lang 64s, Lang 84s to cook on. I'd never been close to a Lang except my good friends, the slabs.com, had cook on a Lang. And on top of that, we had green wood. So David Bosca started his hog really early, and I walked over to see David off camera, and he had boxes of wood all around the back of this thing. And I said, David, what's going on? And he's like, Rod, all this wood is green. I keep trying to find seasoned wood that'll stay burning in this pit. And I thought, oh no. We had a ton of trouble with the wood in this Lang, and I fought the thing all night. And at 3 a.m., the crew leaves. They leave one cameraman behind, and he's not supposed to talk to us. He's just supposed to film whatever we're doing. And he comes over and he starts talking to me. He's like, hey, I got to tell you this. He's like, David Bosca's over there mumbling things like, what am I doing? There's no way I'm going to beat Rod Gray on a stick burner. And to be honest with you, I was completely demoralized and feeling like maybe it was just good enough to make the finals of the show. I was just mentally, I was giving up because we'd started early that morning. We were going all night. We are going to cook the next day. And Sherry'd gone to the hotel. And I will tell you, and I've told David this, that did re-energize me. And I worked and fought that fire. And to be honest with you, I didn't get my fire straightened out until about 6 a.m., about the time Sherry showed back up. And our hog was not getting anywhere close to being done. So when you see that portion where we cook those ribs, and there's a whole story there I won't bore you with, and I finished last in the ribs, and Leanne wins ribs. And I asked her on camera, hey, do you know the order? That was all genuine because I was trying to find out if I was going to go first. Because if I went first, there's no way I'm winning this. My hog's not done. But when she tells me, well, I'll tell you this much, you're not going first, I was like, oh, yes. So it takes them like an hour and a half to film the judging of one team. So I knew I had an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So I stuffed that firebox completely full of wood. It would not have held another stick. And I opened up all the vents and I went back behind the motorhome where they sequestered me for 2 hours. And when we came back out, I had no idea. We opened up that door and checked that hog and it was done. And had we been first, we would have never won that show. Never won that show. And it was just a stroke of luck that I was able to fill that thing full of wood and let it cook for 2 hours on its own and then present, and that hog was done, or there's no way we win that finale.
So it sounds like cooking in the TV world, you don't really have you don't know exactly when turn in is, so to speak. It could vary by hours, it sounds like.
It can. In fact, now you've got me to where I have to tell you the other part of the story. After our hogs are on, they present us with ribs, and that's where they're going to decide the order hogs turn in. The winner gets to pick. And I know we draw for how we're going to turn in the ribs. And I know that it's going to take them a good amount of time to judge rib 1 and rib 2. So as we're done, I overcooked my ribs a little bit, but I lean over to Sherry and say, hey, let's put the most overdone ribs in the box because we're going to get turned in third. And they're gonna firm up while they're cooling off, and that's gonna help us. And they heard me on the microphone, and they changed the judging. So on that episode, they judge ribs, bang, bang, bang. And when you see Myron take a bite of my rib, Myron Mixon take a bite of my rib, the whole side comes off. And as a result, I get third out of 3 in ribs. And I'm a good rib cook in 2009, but I was playing the odds. And so when they start talking again, Melissa Cookston says something to me on camera, on mic, about she doesn't know anybody who's, I don't know, more of a chess player or a thinker or something. She's referring to what they overheard me say to Sherry and planning to put the overcooked ribs in. So it didn't work out for me, but I did have a plan. So, I'm going to tell you one more thing because it'll be worth it. In the semifinal in Lee Summit, when they're calling us for the winner, we thought we had no chance at winning. If you look over my shoulder this direction, Sherry's back over here and you can see her. And when they call us to win it, you can watch her say, oh, holy shit. Because we thought we had no chance of winning that episode. If you watch it again, you can see the words come out of her mouth. That's how crazy TV is. You just never know. You just never know.
Yeah, and I don't know. To me, that particular style of show, that was, I don't do a whole lot of reality TV, but when it comes to barbecue and cooking shows, I'm a sucker for that. But TV or not TV, it takes certain things to be a winner. It obviously takes great food, it takes some luck, but to consistently win, it seems that everybody I talk to who's been a champion so many times over has one or two things that they really think it's all about when you boil it all down. And I'm curious, what are the things that you attribute most to your success over the years, starting with Team of the Year in that year 2009? How do you do it over and over?
So, so everybody will tell you something different, and that's what's cool about cooking barbecue is there's more than one right way.
Yeah.
My thing, I felt like what gave me an advantage was the ability to taste my food right before it went into the turn-in box and know what adjustments I should make to either balance it or make it pop or add some moisture or whatever it is I needed to do. Jeff Staney owns Oklahoma Joe's Kansas City now. I'm sorry. And he used to have a brisket contest where you turned in whole briskets because he didn't want to find the guy who had the skills to make those adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to find the guy who cooked the best brisket, and the judges actually sliced it and sampled it. So he was looking for the best cook. I may not be the best cook, but in my day, I could taste my food and know what I needed to do in seconds to make an adjustment to it, to make it pop and be successful in the judging tent. I think that's my key to success is that and I had Sherry tasting. Sherry was great at tasting and telling me what I needed to do because I'd had my head in the smoke all night, and that always dulls your senses.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, take note, everybody. If you wanna be great, that's always something to work on, is really tasting your food. And I can't tell you how many times we've gotten in a rush and sent a box without even tasting it, and that you go to awards with just a pit in your stomach because you don't know. You have no idea what's out there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. That's my one tip. If I could only give somebody one tip, play around. Use big flaky salt. Crush your salt down to a dust. Grind your rub. I mean, I was an original rub grinder back before I saw many people doing that. Now I know that everybody's doing it in all different kinds of ways, and even Phil Hopkins introduced a little bottle called gunpowder, which is actually a finely ground rub. In my opinion, Phil will probably tell you differently, but in my opinion, that started based on something I was teaching in a class to do that. So have those things at your disposal so you can find ways to change how your final product tastes.
Yeah. That was a big breakthrough for smoke freaks in barbecue, where we were getting certain results, but not, all of the results. And we had another, cook taste our food, taste as much, taste everybody's food as much as people are willing, to share. And he was really brutally honest. It's good, it's tender, it's good, but it's kind of flat. And we were like, oh, and he talked about, I cook just like you guys cook, but it's all the stuff I do after it's done cooking that sets me apart. And that was just a huge light bulb for us, that went off in terms of all the finishing techniques and all of that.
So am I tipping your hand if I ask you guys, you're pretty successful in the steak circuit. Don't you taste that other steak and maybe make some adjustments at the end?
Absolutely. I always want to do a practice steak. I always want to do a practice steak right before I turn in what's called my, production steak, the steak I'm going to turn into the judges. And, sometimes the schedule is tight, or you show up later, or, whatever. You can make as many excuses as you want to not do that. Oh, I just practiced at home the other day. Well, it's not with the same type of steak that you're going to be picking from, to do your cook, for the judges. So always, how's it going to carry over? What does the weather and all of that do to, your cook? And then any flavors that you need to adjust, at the last moment, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And in barbecue, you guys know this, Jeff, you even know this. When you're in there cooking all day and it's time for turn in, the last thing you really want to do is taste your own food. You have to make yourself do it. You just do.
Yeah. Sometimes it's more of a surprise.
Yeah, that's true too. And not a good surprise usually when you're surprised by that time.
Yeah.
Ms. Freak has always been our primary tester, and I count on her so much for ribs especially. And one competition. I don't remember what year it was, but she got the idea somehow that she just was tired of eating barbecue, so she wasn't going to swallow. She was going to spit these things out, but she didn't tell me. So I'm sitting there, I'm trimming bones, and I hand her the couple off the end, and she tastes it and she spits it out, and I just didn't say anything, and I give her another one, and she tastes it, and she spits it out. Now I'm starting to sweat bullets, right? I'm like, what is going on
We
over
cooked
there?
6 racks and none of them are decent to turn in. What happened? It's
I
the
think
same.
we got to 4 before I'm just like, WTF, man? What is happening? Why are you spitting out? She's like, oh, I'm sorry.
I forgot to tell you. And
Oh, that's hilarious.
from that moment, I knew
Hilarious.
the power that I had. And I said to myself, this poor animal had to die so that we could do this. The least I could do is sample it, and enjoy it in its entirety. So I've never done that again because that really freaked Mr. Freak out here.
Well, that may be the communication issue, Ann. I don't know. That may not have been the actual act. If Sherry would have walked over and spit all my stuff out without telling me what she was doing, I'd have been like, what is going on?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's move on and talk about the present, where you are CEO of KCBS. I understand you just celebrated about 1 year in the hot seat or the top seat, however you want to look at it. How's it going so far? How do you like your new life?
It's going. Here's the thing. I served on the board for 5 years. I cooked on this circuit for 20 years. When the job became available, I just submitted my resume. I knew what I was getting into. And listen, this is the same spiel I give anytime anybody asks me how it's going. It's going fine. It really is. KCBS is a really big ship, and you don't turn that ship quickly. Not that I'm looking to turn it. When I got here, my mantra was it's not broken, and a lot of people didn't believe me or questioned me on that, but it isn't broken. I've never had a larger group of people that are so passionate about one thing, and they all have opinions, and realize that what KCBS is this group of 16,000 plus people, that it's their passion. So when they get in their car to go home at night, they're thinking about barbecue on that drive home. They get done with whatever they have to do, and they're thinking about barbecue in the evening. They drive into work the next day, they're thinking about barbecue, and then they go to work and have to do that. So this is what they do, even mentally, to escape work. And so everyone is so passionate about it, and they're so opinionated, and I get that. And you can't please all the people all the time. We'll try to please as many as we can. We won't get everybody. So I get it. It's a great organization. It really is. You think about what we do, and I have this group of contest reps that are really nothing more than volunteers. They make a little bit of pocket change for 2 full days of work at a contest. Those folks are the most passionate of anybody to give up their days to do this for nearly nothing. But every aspect of it, the organizers, the reps, the judges, the teams, everybody is super passionate about barbecue. And that really, if you take a step back from it, that's so cool. That is so cool that there's such a large group of people so excited about barbecue that they want to share it with everybody and talk about it all the time.
So what does the CEO of the Kansas City Barbeque Society do kind of week in and week out? And then in the big picture of where you're trying to go over, a 2 or 3 year horizon, what do you do at that level? I'm really interested to know.
So I like to sit around in my big office with my feet up on an ottoman and a big overstuffed leather chair and smoke cigars all day. No,
do they feed you barbecue or?
Realize, Brian, that KCBS has a full-time staff of 5 people, including me. And our membership calls all the time, and they like to allude to this big staff we have. One day, in a particularly really frustrating call, one of my staff members said, "How many people do you think work here?" And the answer on the other end was 80.
Wow.
And she said, "There are 5 of us here, sir." But the point is, we do a lot with a little, and I'm hands-on, and everybody, it's hard to pigeonhole anyone into a specific role because we all answer the phone, we all respond to emails, we deal with membership, we deal with team of the year, we deal with judges, we deal with CBJ classes, we deal with contests, we all do it all. Obviously one of the staff members is our contest coordinator, and one of them is specialized in membership, and one of them is the digital media manager, and then we have a director of marketing communications. And those are all amazing titles, but we all do a little of everything there. And my day, by the way, is completely full. It's unbelievable the hours I can put in. And I've had to readjust to the idea that I just have to turn it off at some point because I'm never going to be caught up.
Yeah.
So in terms of what I do a little of everything. I spend a lot of time talking to new folks who want to host a barbecue contest, who don't have any idea what that's about and what that looks like. And they always want to know, is it a great fundraiser? And you know, how do you go about it? And how do you get the teams? And how do you get the judges? And so I'm on a lot of those calls, talking to a lot of great people. And then I see those contest applications come in from those people who've never hosted a contest. And it's very rewarding that I have in a 30-minute or less time convinced someone to host a barbecue contest somewhere in the country or outside the country, and you know, put in a ton of effort and work with a small group of volunteers. So that's the day to day. I've been lucky enough to travel the last 2 weekends. 2 weeks ago, I was in Waller, Texas, outside of Houston, and then this last weekend I was in Yorkville at Sean Young's event, saluting with smoke. So my goal is to go one contest a month if I can. I missed August, so I hit those 2 weeks. The Royals next week right here in Kansas City, and then finally, probably my last trip of the year will be the Jack. I'd really love to come to Murfreesboro. It's one of my favorite contests, but it's the week before the Royal, and I just can't pull it off. So a little bit of travel. And you asked me about like 3 years. So there's so many things that I want to do, and I can't do them all. The staff is too small. The money's too tight. You know, we're a nonprofit organization that scrapes by. About every dime we take in, we turn around and send back out in one way or another. It's not like we're sitting on piles of money. So we have to be very careful and, you know, do things incrementally. But, you know, there are a lot of things I want to do, Brian. I'll name a few of them. One, I would love to find a way to start a network of competitions for youth. Maybe high school, maybe college, maybe military, probably high school. But there are hurdles there. You know, where do those teams find the money? And where do they find the chaperone and the cookers and dealing with I'm sorry, I thought someone was giving me a tip to tell you, and they're texting me, but that's a big project for me. But and there are some people lining up ready to write a check to do those kind of things, but I want to get it right the first time, and there are a lot of logistics there that I need to work out. But I really, really want to do something, because I'll be honest with you. The KCBS members are aging out. They're all getting older, and we're not attracting along a lot of the younger people. But I do think that some of the programs that were started before I got here, and I'll give you a couple of examples, the Backyard Series, a barbecue contest, and the One Meat contest. I think those both are amazing events. And someone had the forethought to say, you know what, the younger folks don't want to invest 2 days and buy $100,000 dually truck and a 40-foot trailer with living quarters. And how do we get them involved? And I think the Backyard Series, which is a one-day event with typically two meets. And I think the One Meat contests, where either backyarders or Master Series folks both can rub elbows and compete and earn points for their team of the year chase. I think those are an amazing, well thought out idea, and I love that idea. So I want to keep those going, and actually promote them even more. But, you know, and then I want to keep the ship upright for the next 3 years if I could do that. Which, you know, it sounds easy, but it takes work to keep things going down the tracks right, and that's my goal.
So in terms of events coming up, you mentioned the Royal. That's one of the crown jewels of competition barbecue, as far as many are concerned. What else you got coming up that you want to talk about in the KCBS world?
So a couple of things. You know, when I got here, our World Invitational, which I'd like to see become the 5th major in barbecue, was already planned to the nth degree. All I did to go down and watch my reps work their magic in Gadsden, Alabama. And that was in November, and that was a great year. And then they also had decided they wanted to move it up and not have it so late. and I couldn't change their mind, so we moved it up to August in 24. It was hot and it was hard, but it was a great event. I thought it went really well. But this year will be the first year where we pull the banquet out and make it a separate standalone event. First time in 3 or 4 years now that we do that. And I remember those and I love those. Those are some of my best memories. But we're going to do that January 13th of this year at Harrah's Casino in Kansas City. We're going to have the banquet as a standalone event, the annual awards banquet, where we crown our winner, our Masters Team of the Year, our Backyard Folks, Turkey Smoke Team of the Year, and do all of our awards for judges and the Gary and Carolyn Wells Awards and all those things as a standalone separate event where we're all not worried about the gash we found when we cut open our brisket at the event, or that we didn't like our ribs, and we're not worried about that stuff. It's just a good weekend to have it. And I realize that banquet is for the people who are going to receive awards and maybe not for everybody, but I really want to celebrate that weekend. So our breakout sessions are going to be spectacular at this event. Something I haven't seen KCBS do, I think, ever. I know it's been done around the country at some different events, but we're going to set up and bring in the top pit masters, the most knowledgeable people, and we're going to have sessions on if you want to bring a sauce and rub to market and have the top guys there talking about it. Tim Shear, hopefully Malcolm Reed, and guys like that, Craig Sherry with Texas Pepper Jellies and Craig Sauce and David Bosca, people like that, who you can ask questions of in an audience and find out the details of bringing sauces and rubs to market. We're going to do another one with restaurateurs where we hopefully have, Darren Worth and Chris Lilly and Brad Leininger and some of those people. And you can ask them questions about becoming a caterer or a vendor or opening a restaurant and what the pitfalls are. This is the kind of information that really you can't get anywhere else. Yeah. And then the one I'm proud of all of them. Don't get me wrong. We're going to do a marketing session on how to market yourself and hopefully have Melissa Cookson and Tuffy Stone. But the one I'm really proud of, and I'm calling in about every favor I have and some I don't, is we're going to have a keynote breakout session, 2 hours long. And I have commitments from most of these folks, not all of them yet, but Myron's committed, Myron Mixon, Johnny Triggs committed, Chris Lilly has committed, Melissa Cookston has committed if she doesn't have a conflict. And I'm still waiting to hear from Tuffy. So Tuffy, if you're listening, hit me back with that text and let me know you're coming. But I'm going to get those 5 guys, those 5 pit masters, and maybe 1 or 2 more and put them in a room. And we're going to do a 2-hour session with a moderator where basically it's driven by questions from the audience. And it's, no holds barred, ask anything. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen all those names in one room at one time together. And I think it's going to be a blast to do.
So this is
those are what I'm trying to put together in breakout sessions for this banquet.
So this is January 13th next year in Kansas City. Sounds like it's an all-day event or the better part of a day in the banquet. So who all is allowed to go? I understand it's mainly to get awards at the end, but the session sounds really cool.
So if you're a KCBS member and you buy a ticket to the banquet, then you have all access to the breakout sessions. And I'm probably going to get this wrong, and Rhiannon Dickerson, my director of marketing communications, is going to kick my butt tomorrow. But if you're a KCBS member, I think there's a small fee for you to get into the breakout sessions if you're not going to go to the banquet. And if you're not a KCBS member, we're just going to ask you to join on the spot because it's only $45 for a year's membership to KCBS. And then that same fee, which I think is $75. And then you have all access to all those sessions, see all those people. And those aren't all the sessions. We're going to do a town hall. We're going to do an organizer roundtable. We're going to have sessions that aren't just for pit masters. Even though that last keynote session, I think I can't think of a person who wouldn't want to be entertained by sitting in that room for a couple hours and here's what those guys have to say. And maybe grabbing a picture with them when it's over.
Awesome, Rod. Well, let's move on to a little bit of flavor talk here. So Ann and I have been using the Eat Barbecue line of seasonings for, almost as long as we've been in barbecue. And since you've got this wealth of competition experience, I have to believe that some of that went into the making of these products. But I'm really curious just to have you talk about how you develop some of these, and maybe most importantly, how do you like to use them? Make them accessible to anybody who's listening. Maybe give us some shortcuts. So, if you don't mind, let's start with one of my favorites, which is the most powerful stuff.
Wait,
And
that's one of my favorites.
yeah.
Come on.
Well, while you're talking, I'll share some stuff. So,
Well, anybody who asks me gets this story, but in terms of how I came up with my products are inspired by other people's products that I used prior to coming out with products. And I think that's how a lot of people do it. So I took inspiration from some of the older rubs and sauces that were available and I was using and winning with, and said, you know what, I want to recreate this and make this tweak or that tweak to it in a way I think will improve it. And that's what I did. And so most powerful stuff was really, I call IPO my first product because that's initial public offering. It's a sauce, but I think most powerful was probably my first product. It's my all-purpose rub, and it's what I call a savory rub. If you taste it on your finger, it's a lot of salt, and then you start to pick up some other flavors like onion and garlic and chili powder and cumin and of course black pepper and then little other notes in there. But it's just a good basic all-purpose rub, and it's the rub I used in competition exclusively on my brisket, including to be the national brisket champ in 2000. I think that was 2007 or 2009, and runner up one year. But that's a very well-rounded product. It's all-purpose. It gets used in ways that you wouldn't think of that are outside of barbecue. I think Ann has one that she likes to use it for.
Just today, I'm making sausage gravy for B&G at Murfreesboro, and Rod had filled me in on a little secret. We too, at Smoke Freaks and Competition Barbecue, had a lot of most powerful stuff on our brisket turn-ins over the years. But the more Brian and I started doing this flavor testing, the more we really had breakthroughs that these may be called barbecue seasonings, but these are seasonings. These are flavors that we can deploy in all kinds of ways. So I hit Rod up one day and he told me about throwing a little most powerful stuff into the mix for my sausage gravy recipe. And Rod, I mean it when I tell you, I have not made a batch of sausage gravy that hasn't had most powerful stuff in it. So try it. I mean, I use seasonings in place of, the regular stuff that most recipes call for. I just try to align them a little bit and, go from there. And wow, this one is fantastic at that.
Yeah, it's a great rub. I rim my Bloody Marys with it too, and people use it in a lot of ways that aren't related to barbecue. And it's really humbling every time somebody sends me a note and says, you know what, I love your seasoning and I'm doing this with it, and it's not cooking a brisket or cooking barbecue. It's something else. And it does make you take a step back, though, and realize that all of these rubs are just seasoning blends with different characteristics. And you guys have done some really, really incredible work with the flavor profiling. I've never seen anything like it. I'm jazzed about it, and it just makes it so easy to go on Jeff's website and hey, I love this product, but I'd like to try something similar to it. Well, let me go find the same characteristics. And all of a sudden you've got a new rub to try. And it's not just a shot in the dark. You're already honing in on something that you probably already like. You guys have done a ton of hard work. And I hope it's paying off because it's incredible stuff.
Well, in terms of characteristics, most powerful stuff is one of the very few that are just perfectly balanced in every dimension. And I'm curious if that's what you were going for, or is it just one of those things where that's what Ann and I happen to agree on?
Well, I mean, Brian, I didn't say, hey, 10 years from now, I really hope that Brian and Ann try my rub and it's perfectly balanced. But I really was going for an all-purpose rub. And all what I call, and there are tons of them out there. And I think what's it say on the label, purposeful instead of all purposes is purposeful rub. But yes, I was looking for balance. That is the key to this rub.
And I think balance is probably one of the things that, in the long run anyway, wins barbecue competitions. Because it took me a while to figure it out, but in a lot of ways it's about not offending anybody. And balance seems to be one of the best ways to achieve that.
That's my mantra: offend no one. In competition barbecue, your goal is to offend no one.
All right, so we used a whole bottle of that stuff last week or 2 weeks ago, cooking whole hog and doing a big vending event, and it works perfectly well on hot and fast pork in the form of whole hog. I just love the color on it, and that's one of the reasons I reach for it for all kinds of things.
He comes
So,
home from doing this cook, and I had, given him a bunch of seasonings. I'm like, now we got to get these back, Brian. Okay. So he walks in the door, and I'm like, well, you brought the seasonings back. You brought most powerful stuff, right? He's like, used it all. I'm like,
the whole thing, and we
well,
buy
it's
the
a
big
big
jug,
thing. I mean,
29 ounces.
yeah. So, Jeff, I know you can help us out.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it looks like Jeff has a little bit of it in stock. I think I see a bottle there. Brian, I will tell you, I'm glad you mentioned the color, because that's the only thing that I've improved on since I introduced the most powerful stuff. Is I did go back and ask them, worked with my co-packer to improve the color, and we did that.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who do not know, be sure and store your barbecue seasonings in a dark place. The sun will absolutely destroy the color of seasonings, and even like just the overhead lights, it doesn't need to be direct sunlight. And you'd be shocked at how fast it can happen. A couple of months you've been away from that seasoning, you pick it up, and the front side is lighter than the back side. So keep that one in mind. Pro tip for you guys who hoard seasonings like Anna and I do. Let's talk about this one, Zero to Hero, starting with where'd that name come from? Why'd you decide to call it that?
Well, the idea is you buy a bottle of that, and you go from zero to hero with your
That really? It works just like that?
Yeah, that's all. All you have to do is buy it. You don't even have to sprinkle it on anything.
Just
Stand there with it in your hand, and all of a sudden you're the hero. Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you use this stuff for? Looks like it's a pretty bold seasoning here.
This is my competition rib rub, and it is a little bold and it's a little sweet. I will tell you that it is my #1 seller, far and away. It probably outsells my other 4 products in the neighborhood of 4 to 1. It's the rub that I push out the door day after day after day after day. I just brought Jeff a big batch of it. It's absolutely fresh from being made. It can't be more than about 2 or 3 weeks old, which is, you don't know the rub business. That's pretty incredible, quite honestly. And I produce this, by the way, I produce all my rubs in small batches with the idea that I want it to turn over. But the game I play is the idea that sometimes I get caught by production being further out than I expected it to be. And then I'm out of it for a week or 2 or 3. And I hate that, but I offset that with the idea that if you grab a bottle of my product, for the most part, it's going to be really fresh.
Yep.
I think Jeff even had somebody send him an email and say, I've never cooked with anything fresher.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that last shipment, we sent it out to a vendor, and he sent a photo because he's like, it smells amazing. I've never had it this fresh. And, and Rod said, he replied back, I love seeing that.
Yeah, that's a huge compliment when somebody realizes how fresh my rub is, because for the most part, it's always fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, seasonings definitely have a half-life, and it's not that long, right?
Yeah.
So
Brian, this is my rib rub. I put it on my pork. I mix it with most power stuff, 50-50 on my pork. And I used it on my chicken until I brought out sweetness, and then I started to use sweetness on my chicken. So I pretty much use all my own. I used all my own products in competition, and I used maybe 2 others total. So if I wanted to produce products that if someone walked up to me and said, "Do you really use these?" the answer would not only be yes, it'd be absolutely, and I win with these. And so that's what was behind all of my products, is they've got to be something I use. And that's why I don't have a bunch more because it's not that easy.
So aside from the fact that Americans like sugar, what do you think makes this one so popular? Is this all competition people, or people buying this to use at home?
No, this is so it started as all competition people, and it's still a lot of competition people, because I even had my co-packer, the salesman at where I have my stuff made, introduced me to another person in their company, and he said, Rod sells a lot of bulk, indicating that not everybody does that. So he's saying I sell a lot of 29-ounce shakers and a lot of 5-pound bags. But this rub is caught on with a ton of people who aren't competition folks, because Kids seem to love it. It does produce great color. It produces some sweetness. It does have some balance to it. It even has a little bit of smoke in it, which is, I know there are some rubs out there that do that, and it's the right amount where you smell it and it smells a little different, but you can't quite put your finger on the fact that it has a little bit of smoke in it. I don't know. And maybe it's the success I had and some of the other people who used it and taught it, but Zero to Hero is an incredible seller for me. And people don't just order a few cases of it; they order a lot of it.
And 5-pound bags and grows. It sells
It
a lot
goes-
of 5-pound bags.
Yeah, Zero to Hero goes in a lot of the chili that I make, just in the stove top or whatever. And I think all your dry seasonings are great on everything, and everybody kind of always says that. But sometimes Brian and I, just for fun, will like have some deviled eggs and throw some barbecue rubs on them. And this one is also really good.
Popcorn. I get a lot of people tell me they sprinkle Zero to Hero on popcorn.
Well, if you haven't tried it yet, I think that would be a perfect candidate for corn on the cob. That's a new thing I got into this summer, was putting barbecue rubs on buttered corn. Corn's got to be good, so we're past that now. But next year, give it a shot.
I'm going to get some corn from the store anyway. You just told me about this, and I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to wait till next August when the corn's back. I got to try it. I'm going to do it. I'll sacrifice good corn just to try this out.
All right, you take your chances with that grocery store corn. But, I bet it'll transform even that. So I believe this next one is the latest product that you released a few years back. Is that right? The sweetness.
That's correct. Sweetness is. I introduced the four of them in 2012, and then I'm too old to remember the year, but this came along several years later. It did, and I'll give you a hint. If you put it in one hand and Zero to Hero in the other hand and taste them, you will swear to me that they're different rubs, and they're not. I'll tell you the truth. This is an MSG-free version of Zero to Hero. That's the difference. But the thing is, I couldn't just remove MSG. I needed to add something back to make the formula remain the same. So I added back some sugar. So this has even more sugar in it than, and you can see your sweetness is all the way up to 4 on your flavor profile here. Is even a little sweeter than Zero to Hero, a little less balanced. But what's the craziest thing about this rub is when you taste it, you can really taste the onion and the garlic in it. It's exactly the same amount that's in Zero to Hero, but that sugar actually pushes forward the onion and the garlic flavor in this rub. And it's the reason, because I brought it out later, they were using a different paprika for this rub, and the color was incredible. And so I went back to them and said, now I need you to make the color of Zero to Hero and the most powerful stuff. I need you to boost that color to be the same. And that's when I made that change in those two rubs.
Isn't this beautiful? I love our macro shots. I mean, look at this. This is art.
It really is.
Truly. I could look at these all day.
Well, I just like that you can really get a sense of, what the blend's all about. Like this one clearly has a lot of, regular sugar in it. Like the kind that comes in a bag and coats your tongue real quick. Less black pepper than you see in the most powerful stuff, but still enough in there to make it a barbecue rub.
And you can, look at the fringe. Look at the fringe of the shot, and you can see some other spices. You see a little bit of chili flake. I see a little bit of parsley. It's actually in the pile. But yeah, you can pick out things in this shot. That's incredible. I've not noticed that shot this close before.
Yeah, it's because everybody uses cell phones these days. They can't look at this in flavor vision like we're seeing it right now.
And I'll tell you, when we take the photos and you actually start to break it out and that stuff comes out of it, it's like you could not even see that if you stared at the bottle, in the store or whatever. But when you really start to vibrate it out, it really brings out all those different spices.
I said this before, and it's kissing butt a little bit, but the truth is, I've not seen anybody do this. That when you introduced it to me, I was jazzed about it. I'm still excited about it because it's something unique in barbecue we haven't ever seen done, where someone can go to the Barbecue Pro Shop site and they can say, I like it to be a little sweet. I had that one rub I used to use. It's not available anymore, but let me figure out a flavor profile I like. That's an incredible new approach to how to shop for barbecue rubs, and I hope everybody takes advantage of it because it's a game changer.
So you also have a couple of great sauces, and I see them on the shelves in Kansas City all the time, like at the Sunfresh grocery store down the street from where my mom lived and where I grew up. I'll see your products on the grocery store shelves. IPO sauce. So that was your first product, right?
That was the first. I want to call it my first product, so that's why I put the IPO label on it. I'll be honest with you, that was my chicken sauce in competition. Now on the BS panel on the side of it, it tells you it's my rib sauce, and I dabbled with that as my rib sauce, but it truly was my competition chicken sauce. Here's the most bizarre thing. I put that sauce out, and I start getting emails from people saying, "Holy cow! I bought your Zero to Hero rub. I bought your IPO sauce because each of those labels say to buy the other one." And they're using it in competition and winning ribs. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm struggling in the ribs right now. So I switched to IPO as my sauce. And I'm not kidding you. I picked up a couple of wins pretty quickly. And then I realized, we're used to that thick, glossy sauce. Blues Hog was a game changer when it came out, and it's still one of the top products on the circuit. But a little slight twist in flavor profile that doesn't shock the judges, but gives them just a little twist on what's going on. So I think the apple cider vinegar that's in IPO probably does that, and still creates a great sheen. And right before I finished cooking, I cooked a few times and had some really great success with that combination, even though it wasn't intended that way initially, even though the panel said it was. It was my chicken sauce. But yeah, and that's what's different about it.
So to me, it does taste like it seems obviously developed for competition, but I can't imagine there's many competition cooks frequenting the Sunfresh in my mom's old neighborhood. So I'm curious, does the public eat this stuff up? I mean, it is great on tater tots, I will say. It's great on French fries, I will say. So I wouldn't be surprised, but it's kind of it's like, wow, compared to your standard Kansas City sauce.
Yeah, because it's bright, because it's got the brightness from that vinegar. But Brian, I'll tell you this: it says on there a Memphis sauce that defected to Kansas City. I think that hurts me in Kansas City. The next big thing, my other sauce probably outsells IPO in the Kansas City metro area, like 4 or 5 to 1. Really? But outside of Kansas City, IPO sells a lot more sauce. So when I get away from Kansas City, folks like that flavor. And then I see these weird pockets. Wichita, Kansas buys a ton of IPO. I don't know what's going on down there, but they really like that sauce. And there are these certain pockets around the country that really like IPO.
So for as long as you've been in Kansas City, and as well as you know the Kansas City scene, I'm wondering if you will name drop a few of your favorite barbecue restaurants that folks from out of town should hit up when they're passing through. Who do you like these days?
So that's a really tough question because of the job I have, right? But I did go on a radio show here in town a couple of weeks ago, and we had this discussion. And I have to say it this way. Even mediocre barbecue is really great food. So, I learned years ago in Kansas City, somebody said, you know what? I went to this little hole in the wall. It's clear out in Grandview, and it had the best ribs I've ever had. I'm like, the best
I know that
place. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
They moved, didn't they?
What's that?
They moved, didn't they?
Yeah, they moved. The ribs were just okay that day. But realize, you go to a barbecue place, and if you happen to hit the jackpot and they're just pulling fresh ribs off and they throw one of those on a tray for you, you're going to have an amazing meal. Yeah. So, but some of my friends that have been competition people with me, rubbed elbows with, Rob McGee, the late Rob McGee at Q39 is still really amazing food. That's upscale barbecue in Kansas City. And Joe Pierce, who's a good friend of mine, and he and his brother Mike are turning out great food at Slaps Barbecue. I love Joe's Kansas City. I always have. The Z-Man sandwich is it's an icon here in town, and it's never a bad sandwich. It is never a bad choice. And they have amazing ribs too. But there are lots of places I go eat barbecue. Believe it or not, the newest one for me, Meet Mitch here in Kansas City, and Mitch Benjamin is a friend of mine, and I told him I hadn't been. I was waiting for his settle in a little bit, and he coaxed me into coming, and it's some of the best barbecue I've had in Kansas City in a long time. I'm proud to have Meet Mitch here in town, and his ribs, Sherry, the closer. We don't eat barbecue typically. I go and eat Mitch's chicken sandwich, which is just outstanding. It beats Popeyes and all the fast food places, and he has a great smash burger, but the closer goes and orders a slab of ribs, which is incredible because we don't eat barbecue, but she loves those ribs. So I'll get 5 text messages here in the next 10 minutes scolding me for picking out a few people. There's a ton of great barbecue here in town.
Yeah, we didn't mean to get you in trouble. So Jeff,
right.
What about you?
My texts are starting to come in too, Rod. Sorry.
All right, Jeff, name drop someone else from Kansas City that you like. You got any favorite places out there that you've been?
Who, myself?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
City Barbecue.
I went to University of Missouri in Columbia, and when my friends took me to Gates, and granted this was way before I was introduced to barbecue, I thought I died and went to heaven. Mm-hmm. And Gates spicy sauce, I hear people, we talk barbecue sauce, and I talk ad nauseum with everybody. That is one where people constantly are like, that is the best. I'm like, I am with you. But Gates is a classic, and I love them all too. And Meet Mitch is also. It was great. I saw him up in the Windy City, and he came out with me with a toothpick with one of his burnt ends on. He goes, "You ready to taste the best burnt end you've ever tasted?" And it was pretty darn good. And he sold out of those. Chicago loved those. So, and all my friends have been raving about Meet Mitch. So
yeah.
I will say, up until I got into competition barbecue, I used to move a lot of Gates spicy barbecue sauce around the country, even the world, because I loved it so much. And I was just trying to spread the gospel. Go, this Gates spicy sauce is the best. Kansas City people are a little hardcore about Kansas City barbecue, and Kansas City sauce is a specific thing, right? It's got to taste a certain way. It needs to have a little molasses a lot of times. But I grew up on a place called Smokestack. It became Jack Stack later on, but we grew up fairly close to the Martin City location. And that's just such a funky little building, at least the original, which is still there, surrounded by the expansion. I just have some of my best memories about having special family meals at Smokestack.
I'm going to ruin your day, Brian. The little building's gone.
Oh, no.
It's a beautiful new place now, all completely redone. It's an incredible. We ate there not long ago. I was going on a show to talk about onion rings, and you can't talk about onion rings in Kansas City without eating Smokestack's Jack Stack's onion rings. So we went so I could just get a refresher. It's their newest restaurant, and it's a beautiful place. You'll have to stop by and see it.
Road trip, yeah.
Right on, Kansas City road trip. Well, let's wrap up with one final question. Do you still cook outside anymore, like in your own backyard? And what do you like to cook?
I have an FE 100 on my back deck, and I have a big green egg on my back deck, and I love to grill. In fact, I'm to the point I'm so spoiled that I won't order a steak in a restaurant because I'm always going to be disappointed. I just cook them at home when I can. When I was competing, I had a little better access to all kinds of great meat. Now that I'm not competing, I've kind of lost a few of those contacts just because I don't need them. But I still always seek out the best steaks I can buy and wherever I can find them. And we love to grill a steak, and I'm a pretty good outdoor burger cook, and grilling anything. I had to develop a recipe for a little grilling demo a summer ago, and I was being prodded to do something, and I kind of joked back that I'm going to do grilled vegetables, and the person who was asking me said, kind of dared me, and I did it. And I've got a really great new recipe of grilled vegetables with a miso vinaigrette with some toasted sesame seeds over it. And it's just a variety of summer vegetables. It's really a great dish, but it's a grilled dish. So I love to grill. I do. And It's over charcoal. I'm not a purist. I'm happy to have a gas grill. I think they serve a purpose, but right now I'm loving that big green egg I've got out there. In fact, I burned the gasket out of it. I'm not looking forward to scraping that old gasket off and getting a new one on it, but I got to get that done. Absolutely. I love to cook outside.
So what is your secret to a perfect burger?
See, it's the exact opposite of what they tell you these days. I really make sure the edges of my burger are sealed well, so the burger doesn't crack and let all of its natural juices out of it. And in doing that, I'm handling it way too much. But that's what I do, and that's what I've always done. And we've won some burger contests with my burger, and I do also make the impression, the indent in the center of it. Otherwise, if your heat's a little hot, you'll end up with these footballs because they'll puff up so bad. But really, truthfully, I use good meat too. It's not burger meat. It's grinding up some different cuts and getting it from my butcher. I get 10 pounds at a time. So it's good meat in a burger and the thick burgers. And then during the pandemic, we really worked hard on our smash burger indoors. And I've got a pretty decent smash burger too. But it's just good quality meat, and the way you handle it, I think, is enough to get a good burger. And just simple things, salt and pepper, and yeah.
Very good. Well, Rod, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure spending the last hour with you, and can't wait to see you out there in the KCBS world and out there with Barbecue Family. Best of luck on the big banquet coming up. Again, that was January 13th next year in Kansas City at the Harrah's. So you can catch some great seminars, and I have a feeling you can head down to the casino that night and sit at the blackjack with some of the winningest people in barbecue who will be there.
I think you're right, Brian. And thank you for having me. I can't believe it's been over an hour already. You guys were great. Jeff, Jeff is great. I saw Jeff last Friday, and I can see he set up his banner just right so he can show off the Eat Barbecue products right there.
Yeah.
And we know they're fresh because I just dropped them off. And it was great. Good luck to you guys at Murfreesboro too this coming weekend.
Thank you.
Kick some butt.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for everything, Rod.
Thank you for everything. Your friendship, especially.
I appreciate you letting me come on. Thanks a lot, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Signing out.
everyone.